Hello. Hello, hello, and welcome. My mind is moving in a number of different directions. I want to address my lipstick. I want to tell a funny story about a Google search I just did. I want to welcome you all into the space. And often when I begin, one of the things I like to say is my name is Kendra Kunov. And it is approximately 3:19 p.m. on Friday, September 25th, where I am on the west coast of Northern California. And I do that as a way of orienting myself and all of you. It orients you to who I am and where I am. And I also do then that as a way of inviting you to potentially do the same for yourself. In some way, it's one of these funny things like to say, oh, I'm Kendra Kunov. Like we think like, oh, I already know that. I'm me, right? I've been me my whole life. But it goes, oh, right, that's who I am. And then I say what time it is, where I am, which again, you think like, oh, I already know that. But it's like, oh, yes. And this is the time and space in which I actually am. It's a call to be present to who we are and where we are in some small way. So I invite you into that. I keep looking at myself and I'm like, gosh, I don't even look like me. I don't know what that means, but something about this pink hair. And so I'm wearing this lipstick today in honor of Ruth Bader Ginsberg. There is an awesome company called Lip Slut, Lipslut. You can Google it. I actually haven't looked in a while. I don't know if they have new lipstick shades, but the one that I'm wearing is called Notorious RBG. And they put this out a couple of years ago. I just buy everything that they make. So they have one that's called Fuck Trump and Fuck Kavanaugh. And if you've been listening to me for any length of time, it shouldn't surprise you that I find that delightful. But of course, when they made a shade honoring Ruth Bader Ginsberg, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Even if these lipsticks don't look good on me, I want to own them and I want to wear them. So today in particular, I put on this shade for her, the Notorious RBG. And then, funny story, before I dive into the meat of this, if you will, and those of you who are here with me live, and actually even if you're watching the replay at this point in time, now is the time to say, hey, and you can let me know where you are watching from. I love getting a sense of that wider web that we're all connected to. And if you're here for the replay, you can just say like replay from, such and such, wherever you are in the world. It's always lovely to know where we're sort of coming together from. So give me a hey, let me know you're here. That helps it to feel a little more connective rather than that like I'm just talking out loud to myself in my office, which is at any other time in history that would be seen as crazy pants. So I've been thinking about this actually since the evening that I found out that Ruth Bader Ginsberg died. I was lucky enough to be in the wilderness up near Mount Shasta, and with a very, very small group of wonderful, wonderful humans. And when I first actually saw the news, a friend of mine texted me, and I had my phone off most of the time, but I turned it on for a moment because someone was going to arrive and they were late, and I was tracking them. And this text came through that Ruth Bader Ginsberg had died, and I had an immediate visceral reaction. It was like, like, oh, this, I think for many of us, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but it has farther reaching implications than simply the loss of an incredible life, which is always so. There's always that just like, oh, like the loss of a truly, truly rich library of a human being. And then just layers upon layers, in terms of what an incredible woman she was, and in terms of the work that she's done for women, and then just so many other layers to it. So it had this immediate reaction. And I chose not to tell anyone. I didn't want to impact anyone that I was with like that. But the next morning, we all found out together, and it was such a beautiful space to be in that grief around. And one of the things that came up right in that step together when we all found out right at the beginning was really the sense like, I think it was maybe one of my friends, Melissa, said the way she took care of herself and her body so that she could continue to do her work. And it's like I saw it, but the way that Melissa said that just shifted my perspective. I was like, yes, there's this piece of like a weave that many of us, either very personally or that we can see in the collective, where it can go sort of swing to one side or swing to the other side. And it's like, take care of yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first, self-care, make sure, like there's like that very take care of yourself oriented perspective. And then there's like, what are you doing for other people? Or we need, it's all hands on deck. We need to take care of climate change or this or that, and then like, what am I doing out here? And I think we all know that there's actually a weave between these. But sometimes even when you hear people say like, well, you have to take care of yourself or you can't take care of others, you can still feel this little bit of a leaning that towards one side or the other that's often really around like, no, you've really got to take care of yourself. Like your own energy is paramount, or your own health, or your own well-being, or whatever that is, even if they're sort of saying so that it's you can do good in the world. I mean, we live in a fairly self-centered culture. Happens to the best of us. And so I think it's very hard to really understand like what is it to sacrifice for someone else, for another, for something you believe in. Like, I think most of us actually would think that sacrifice itself is that we shouldn't have to sacrifice. So, and again, I won't go on that tangent because I really could, but I would disagree. I would disagree. Especially right now in history. But there was something about the way that she brought that perspective to, I never met Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't know her. I've never even read that much about her. We have a children's book about her. My daughter loves it, and I've read some articles and listened to some interviews. And so there's some things I know, but I don't know her. So I don't know exactly why she worked out in the way that she did, or why the ways in which she took care of herself. But it always had that feeling like, yeah, woman, and cared about her health. And there was like that personal aspect. And it always also felt kind of like that thing that she also did so that she could continue to do her work in the world, which, to the best of my knowledge, and I think some of us feel this way, whether it's always true or not is up for debate, but for some benefit that was broader reaching than just herself, or that many of us would like to think like the work I'm doing is not just for me, but ideally it has wider reaching consequences. And two little side notes I'll say about that is that one, most of the time it is, if you're helping people in any way, like, yes, you're doing things for other people. What I think is valuable is the second piece, which is just to test it occasionally and really look at like, if this didn't impact, like if this didn't benefit me at all, would I do it? And there's some value in really looking at like, am I, in what ways am I working for the greater good that don't necessarily benefit me, or, my family, or my way of life. And to the best of my knowledge, it really seemed like Ruth Bader Ginsburg did that, that she saw that broader realm, and that there was this way of caring for herself and caring for her body so that she could continue to do her work in the world. And so today, when I was contemplating this and wanting to talk about this, and just really the importance of this weave, that actually one of the things that we must do in order to continue to serve the world in whatever ways we do, again, that can be professionally sometimes. For some of us, it's being out in the streets protesting right now. Or, I just signed up to write letters to encourage people to vote. And as I was listening, I'm just going to be straight up honest about this. because I was super excited about it. I was like, this is awesome. I'm just going to send postcards. It's going to be great. And then I was watching the instructions, and it's kind of intensive. I think there are letters, and that you're like supposed to write a few sentences by hand, and it's like a whole. And I was like, oh, this is actually going to take something. And that, again, that's that moment, like, okay, it is going to take something. Like, I'm fucking busy. I'm busy running my business. I'm busy with my kids. I'm busy with my garden. I'm just like, man, life is like full right now. Like, I don't have time to write these letters for voters. And then also that part, like, I don't have time not to, but this is something, if it matters to me, am I willing kind of to sacrifice my time? Maybe watch a little less Netflix or whatever, or do a little less of something else. Maybe I will be more tired during that time. And am I willing to do that? Is it worth it to me? Why am I saying this? But whatever it is that we feel is important that we need to do in this time, conversations we need to have, ways we want to help people register to vote, protesting we want to do, working to get certain people elected, work around a friend who works with food systems and making sure that people who don't have access to good food get access to food. And it ultimately requires that she go spend a lot of time like harvesting food and delivering food in these various places. And it's incredible work. People who are sewing masks, like there's just all kinds of way it could be. But all of that takes time. All of that takes attention and intention and our energy. We may also be fed by it in some way, but it takes our energy, it takes our life force. And so what do we also need to do so that we're actually well sustained in order to do the work that we want and need and know that we must do during this time? So it had me thinking about this phrase that I was going to attribute to the Buddha, but I think after doing a quick Google search, so I could be wrong about this, but I believe that it was one of the early Buddhist teachers named Dogen. It's like real big in the Zen Buddhist world. And it's part of a chant. So I knew the quote, immediately. It's one of those things I think about a lot. And it says, "Save this body, which is the fruit of many lives." And it's a really interesting quote, because there's not much in my experience of Zen Buddhism anyway. I grew up in a Zen monastery, and then I practiced for several years as an adult intensively. But there's not much that A, refers to the body much at all, and B, really cares about the body or the individual. There can be a bit of a bent in Zen Buddhism towards enlightenment, almost as like a removal. Not completely. Zen Buddhism has the bodhisattvas, which basically, if you make a bodhisattva vow, it means that you vow basically to save all beings before you choose your own enlightenment. And it's a particular path, but that there really is this sense like no, I want other beings to become enlightened, to be saved or to become enlightened before my own kind of enlightenment and removal. But still, that's like this one piece, but there can be this way in the practice of Zen Buddhism that can be kind of ascetic or renunciating or not really focused on, and so this line has always really stood out to me. Save this body, which is the fruit of many lives. And I'll just say straight up, like, I don't know what I believe in terms of karma and past lives and how that actually works. Not to dismiss anybody else's belief, but I don't really believe or not believe. I'm like, I don't know. But certainly in that tradition, there is this sense of karma, and there is this idea then of many lives, and there is a bit of a human supremacy bent, right? Because the idea is if you're born into a human life, like that's kind of the epitome, and maybe we've worked many lives just to get to be human, and I totally think that's bullshit. But anyway, it's there. It's baked into this quote, but it both acknowledges whether you believe in past lives or karma or not. It basically acknowledges like wherever you are in your life, it could just be me at 42, and it acknowledges like everything it took for me to still be alive at 42 and where I am and having what I have or the resources I have or the reach I have or the life I have or whatever I have at my disposal. It acknowledges like, which is the fruit of many lives, whether that's past lives, whether that's karma, or whether it's just like all the 42 years that took me to get right here, which are all those different lives. And it's saying, again, whether you're wanting to talk about like this lifetime when I'm, human, female, Kendra Kunov, or whether it's like here in my seat at 42 years old, like this moment in my life, that they're saying, save this body. And in order to, right, which is the fruit of many lives, but like in order to continue on this path, like take these teachings for whatever, again, there's whatever baked into the Zen Buddhist teaching, but also for each of us individually, like what must we carry on? And in what way do we need to save this body so that we can continue to do our work? And I really just love being able to look at Ruth Bader Ginsburg as this one example. And I'm sure that there's like many, many, many. And for any of you who missed at the beginning, my lipstick is an homage to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's called Notorious RBG, and it's by a brand called Lip Slut, and they're fantastic. So just in this moment of both mourning and honoring Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but you can look in your life and you can see, we all have like a ton of examples of people who have not done that, who have, even without any judgment, if we just look like, oh, they didn't actually maintain themselves so that they could carry on strong in their work in the world. But if we shift our attention, it's just like one little shift to the left, to the right, whatever you want to call it, just shift, that I think that we all actually probably have many examples of people who really have, like, oh, I see the way that they have cared for their physical health, cared for their mental health, cared for their energetic well-being, like have taken it upon themselves, not just personally, like, how do I feel good? How do I take care of me? But like, oh, how do I keep maintaining this? How do I, as a practice and with devotion, continue to nourish my physical, my emotional, my energetic being so that I can continue on? And it can be so that I can continue on, to be a Supreme Court justice, or to be a world leader in some way, or to be a large-scale influencer, or to really show up and move through the world in a way that, cares for my children and impacts my community, or, that it doesn't always have to be so large scale, but there's still this sense like, what do I need to do that actually cares for this body, this being, and everything that she's been through this lifetime, possibly past ones, or something, so that I can continue on into many lifetimes, whether that's, within this one incarnation, or if you believe going forward, but that there's some way that we're actually shoring ourselves up. And it turns out it's in a chant called the Eihei Kosu Hatsugan Man, which I must have chanted like a bajillion times when I was living in the Zen monastery, but I've never been a scholar. It's like, it's not my calling. So I love the chanting, and I love all these teachings, and I love the way they come through, but I'm not a scholar. So I didn't remember that. And I was thinking that it was the Buddha who said, save this body, which is the fruit of many lives. Oh, but it's actually in this chant, which is by Dogen. But he says in here, he says, therefore, the Chan, which is what Zen was called when it was in China, the Chan master Lung Ya said, those who in past lives were not enlightened will now be enlightened. In this life, save the body, which is the fruit of many lives. Before Buddhas were enlightened, they were the same as we. Enlightened people of today are exactly as those of old. So there's a lot of beautiful pieces in there, but definitely just this piece of save the body, which is the fruit of many lives. And what was hilarious is that I went to Google it, because I was like, well, this is the quote, but who said it? Where, like, why am I remember it so clearly, but like, where did it actually come from? If I'm going to, send it out into the ether to all of you, I would like to actually be able to attribute it. And it came up with all these like fruit recipes. And how to save fruit, like how to preserve, like keep it in the refrigerator for longer, or things like this. Was all I was like, okay, this is not what I'm looking for. How do I, clearly I don't know how to Google search very well. So all of this, honestly, in some ways, just to say, I could probably say this in like 3 minutes, is really to look at the importance of what actually it is that we need to do to save this body, which is the fruit of many lives, and to honor. And in that way, I mean, you could look at it specifically with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, can we honor her memory by following in her footsteps in that way? She would go and she would lift weights. I saw this incredible video of her trainer who she worked with for 20 years, and he was doing burpees in her honor. Oh, I want to cry just thinking about it now. I mean, I hate burpees. And I was like, this is like being able to see the love and the relationship there, and that like this very personal way of honoring her. And it doesn't have to look the same. It might be weight training. It might be walking. It might be breath, like ways of working with your breath. It might be doing somatic therapy practices. It might be expression. It might be, there's so many ways. It might be around what we eat or what we don't eat, or how do we actually tend to ourselves? And I do think right now, I mean, it's always important, but right now it's so important. And that my inclination around these things, and one of the main ways that we work with them in the collective, which is my membership for women, and it is open for registration right now. So I will put a link in the comments just for any of you who are interested to take a look, is that I always joke that I like hashtag, things. So I'm like, hashtag go smaller. And when we think about, save this body, which is the fruit of many lives, it can sound so big and, weighty, and all the things we know we should be doing. And I actually think so often all the things we know we should be doing is what stops us from doing anything. Rather than, one of the ways that we work with it in the collective is, one is like, what's just the next step? What's like the one step I need to take around caring for this body, this being? Or it might be, sometimes we do something we call 10 tiny things. And it can be less than 10, but it can't be more than 10, and they have to be tiny. So sometimes people will say, one of my 10 tiny things is, a good morning routine. I'm like, no. A good morning routine probably is like 5 of your 10 tiny things, right? It's like that you lay in bed for a minute before you get up, and then you brush your teeth before you go eat breakfast, and you have a glass of warm water before you have your coffee or tea, and then you drink your tea quietly. Like, these are, those are the tiny things. And the essential, the essentialness, the necessity of them truly being tiny and keeping it to 10. That's like, if I do these 10 things, I know I have cared for myself. For a while, one of the things on my 10 tiny things was flossing my teeth. Like, all right, is to really, nail it down. Like, I want to floss my teeth every day. And some of you might be totally grossed out to find out that I did not floss my teeth every day for, 40 years. I was, pretty good. I wasn't like a never flosser. I wasn't a flossing denier, but it was not a daily thing. And then I was like, you know what? That I know. Okay, I want to floss my teeth every day. At another point, I put 100 jump ropes on there. But there'll be things like that. And some of them are very physical in this way, like 100 jump ropes or flossing my teeth. And then some of them are caring for my energetic being, my spiritual being. So one of them would be tend to my altar. And sometimes all that means is I go take the used candles off my altar and put them in the trash. It's like, oh yes, I've tended to that part. It's not that I have to redo my altar every time or take everything off and wipe it down. But so one way to work, is what's the next thing? Another way is really looking like, okay, what would be the 10 tiny things that if I did these every day, I would know that I have cared for my being today. But they have to be tiny. You can have less than 10, but not more than 10. And it's been amazing in the collective. One of the things is sometimes women have chosen to work on that on their own, and they start their own threads in the community forum and support each other and check in and all these things. And then sometimes we've done it as a group, like not everybody, but a lot of us, and really doing that together, and the kind of support and the inspiration that we get from each other in community. Not like accountability, these are all the things I'm going to achieve, but like, I'm gonna report every day whether I've flossed my teeth, and really at this go smaller, tiny level. Another way that we work with it came from one of the people I worked with as a personal trainer. Her name is Amber, And we have a local climbing gym here called Vertex, and they're awesome, even though they're not open right now. And they run a program every summer that's called Abdomination, which great marketing. I was like, I want to dominate my abs. I want abdomination. So I signed up for this program, and I actually didn't realize until halfway through that there was a whole piece of it that had to do with like food and diet. And actually a lot of it was kind of in the realm of things not to eat, so that you could have that whole abdomination ab experience. And when I saw that and I looked at it, and it was like no dairy and no alcohol and maybe no grains, or no, it just was like a lot. And I remember I went to Amber, this wildly fit woman, 2 children, but just like extraordinary. And I was like, all right, like, gotta level with you here. Like, this is never gonna happen. Do you have any suggestions? And she said to me, well, what if you just added a vegetable to every meal? Like, you made a commitment, rather than looking at all these things that, I'm not going to eat this, or I'm going to eliminate this for this time. What if you just made a commitment that you were going to eat a vegetable with every meal, and see what that does? And it was like a total revelation to me, rather than any elimination around food. And it totally changed my meals, because every meal I was like, well, how am I going to add a vegetable to this? I'm like, throw something in, or I'd be like, oh, I haven't had my vegetable yet. Like, gotta like eat a carrot, and it actually really changed how I was relating to food, just with this idea of adding a vegetable, just going like, actually, this is something not like good for me. I know I should, but I want to do. And so let's just add it. Let's add this good thing without trying to eliminate anything else. And it totally changed things. I never stopped eating dairy or drinking alcohol. And at the same time, it had a dramatic effect. So we look at things like that in the collective. And really, this is just one perspective, because we work with so many things in the collective, but really looking at this idea of save this body, which is the fruit of many lives. And I'll close here. So close here just to say that, because the tagline for the collective, and I just say it about the collective, but the reason it's the tagline there is because it's important, because it's something that is so deeply fundamental to what I believe and how I teach, and just how I hold all of this, is a global web of women devoted to embodied wholeness. And I say embodied wholeness because one of the things I talk about is really like, we are born into bodies. This is the realm we're born into. There was a teacher one time who said, in like a public setting, he basically said, this is the realm of food and sex and money. And if you didn't have things to work out in that realm, like, you wouldn't have been born here. And again, in the larger sense, is that true or not true? I don't know. But there's a way you go like, oh yeah, I can feel that. And in addition to that, all of those things are related to the body, right? Food, sex, and money is, debatable. But this is the realm of bodies. And if we weren't meant to work with our bodies, I think we wouldn't have been born here. I don't know for sure that there are other realms, but it seems likely that there are, and it's like, we could have been born into a realm of unembodiedness, right? Of some other way of being and relating, and we weren't. We, all of us, anyone who's watching this or listening to this, or on Facebook, if you're on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, like, you have a body. You were born into a body. And so this is the realm that we are working inside of. And it doesn't have to limit us, like, you are your body and that's it. But we're also not our bodies. I think so many, even spiritual traditions, right? A lot of religions are about how do we get beyond the body, or renunciate the body, or things having to do with the body are dirty or unholy. But even in what we think people will say, like, I'm spiritual, not religious, but even in a lot of spiritual traditions or spiritual communities or the personal growth movement or the new age movement, there's still a lot of like up and out in terms of leaving the body. Like, somehow what's just happening here in like the eating and the having sex and the elimination and the experience of the body and the moving of the body, it is less than what happens in the other realms of the energetic or the emotional or the thought-based. And I firmly disagree. Firmly disagree. Mainly just because we actually have bodies. We're born into bodies. And I'm like, that's got to be relevant. It's got to be relevant. It's like a really important piece of data. So everything that we do, I mean, I know I gave those sort of small specific examples in the collective, but everything that we do in the collective is really comes from an embodied perspective of, no, I'm here in a body. I'm having an experience in a body. Every experience, including my thoughts, actually occurs inside my body because I'm in a body right now. And so again, to like bring it all the way back around is this question of what does it mean to save this body, which is the fruit of many lives, and not like it's something fragile that could be broken. Like I have to save it. I have to. In fact, I was even thinking about this idea. You know what happened is I pulled out, and then I really am going to wrap it up here in the next minute or two. So if you have anything you want to share it now. I pulled out this book that I read in the 4th grade called Tuck Everlasting. I wonder if any of you have read this book, but it horrified me when I read it as like a 9-year-old. This idea of like being stuck at a certain age or like physical age and living forever was horrifying to me. And somehow I ended up with something that's called an anti-aging serum. And I was like, well, I don't even like this idea, because I like the idea of the processes that our bodies go through and who we become through our many lives. Again, whether that's actual lifetimes or that's all the years we go through and everything we have to go through in the future. So not so much like, hold on, well, I want to hold on to this 42-year-old body just the way it is, or couldn't I wish I could go back to the 20-year-old body. I want to hold on, like save it, like that, like preserve it. But to care for, to tend to love, like to actually to care for it in a loving way, to lovingly tend to this body so that for as many years as I possibly can, without it being forever, I do not want to live forever, but that I can continue to do whatever my good work in the world is, beyond just myself, not just so that I can live for myself, but like Ruth Bader Ginsberg, I mean, God bless that woman. I can only imagine that she would have liked to have left the Supreme Court, 4 years ago. But she did what she needed to do so that she could stay as long as she could to do her good work in the world. And it's my wish and my encouragement for all of us to do the same, to not cling so tightly to like our personal care in a personal way, but how do we save this body, which is the fruit of many lives? How do we tend to ourselves and care for ourselves and the being that we are, so that we can continue to do our good work in the world as a gesture forward, whether we ever see the fruits of our labors or not? Because there are gestures that we will make into the world because we believe that they are good and right and holy and just, that as devastating as it may seem to think about, we may never get to see the fruits of those labors in our lifetime. And we can hope them for our children, and we can hope them for our grandchildren, and we can hope them for our great-great-grandchildren. We can, as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said about the arc of history, that we are hopefully bending that arc towards justice. And that we must care for our bodies in order to do that work. Sending you so much love. Ciao.